Parasyte the Maxim, Episode 2, The Devil in the Flesh. Pretty cool episode. It was pretty nice to see already in the very second episode, Shinichi is kind of bonding with the parasite a bit. And at the end of the episode, it seemed like he was slightly losing control. They already showed in the last episode that certain things are kind of just gone. Like certain emotions have left his body. And like he had full on arachnophobia. He had a fear of pretty much insects in general, so it wasn't just arachnophobia, which technically aren't insects. But he had this fear that was a really big deal in the beginning of the episode last time, and then it was gone. And in this episode, it's kind of the same thing. He deals with certain stuff where he has kind of no emotion. He's almost drained of emotion, where it's as if Migi, which he is now named his right hand, has kind of drained some of those emotions out of him in order for for it to exist. So it was kind of interesting. Like when he was in the fight, his mindset was really, I want to at least take out one of these parasites in order to protect the human race. And that was kind of cool. And then we had the ending scene where he saves the cat, but when after he catches like the three little pebbles thrown at him, which was a really awesome scene. It was just like some Matrix type stuff, just like boom, 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 and catches the three stones. He says like, I will tear you apart, I believe, or I will eat you, or something. He said something like that, and or at least it was in his head. I don't think he actually said it out loud, but that was at least in his head, and it's something that even from the first episode we could tell that this character would not have said that normally. So they already kind of introduced the idea that despite Migi only taking control of his right hand, Migi does have mental effects on him where he's changed. He doesn't have certain fears, and when he's got a specific drive, it almost takes him to a point of either numbness or anger and rage a little bit. Like he doesn't actually act on it, but it takes him kind of to a point that's like insane for him, at least, where he just gives a evil look. So that was actually really cool. It was interesting that they introduced that concept, and we also got the idea that if two parasites actually merge in one body, they can live beyond 140 years, which was pretty cool. That was something that we learned. And I'm assuming that's what happened at the end of this episode, where two parasites, one was a man, one was a woman. And I believe the woman is like the main villain woman that we see in the opening, who has like the purple hair and stuff. So I'm assuming that there's going to be two parasites, and probably more than that, as that character fuses with other parasites. Instead of devouring them, they'll merge together to live longer. And maybe that's kind of the objective. Like they merge with other parasites, and then they just continue to grow, and that's pretty much it. Like the only reason they might be cannibalistic against their own species, I guess, or whatever species they bonded to, would be so that they can force the other parasite to join them, and that's pretty much it. So that was a cool concept that we got introduced to. Awesome. I can't even call it a fight. I don't think we can call it a fight scene, but Migi was super sweet in this episode when the other parasite was like, alright, I'm bleeding, I'm losing a bunch of blood here, so you don't have a choice but to transplant onto me, which we don't know if that's 100% possible, but I could see that. I mean, considering she could change into all those different shapes, although Shinichi calls Migi a he, considering the voice, I call it a she, so whatever, I'm probably going to just say that, go back and forth between those two. But considering Migi can do all the craziness that it can do, like it can change all those shapes, it seems like it kind of makes sense, but it isn't 100%. So Migi went with the idea of protect myself, which I feel like it's possible that they're going to introduce Migi learning and caring a little bit for Shinichi, because it just seems like that's inevitable. Like, we are bonded together, but I still have control of myself, you have control of yourself, we communicate, and we kind of we work together. That's just how it is. So I don't know, I feel like that's something that'll definitely come up. It could not happen as well, because Migi is totally just like, I value my life above all others. And it's a very interesting look at the human lifestyle, which I actually really loved in this episode. It's like, I'm hoping that actually carries out through the rest of the series, because I actually like that idea where this parasite is now the top of the food chain in a sense, and I'm sure you could easily kill a parasite by just shooting it, because all you have to do is destroy the body like anything else. It just can't get the drop on you, otherwise it could just turn into like a bunch of blades and just slice you up like crazy, which we saw in the beginning of this episode with, or yeah, I guess it was the beginning of the episode where this guy, who I thought was going to be a main character at first, he comes in and he knocks out the three dudes and is like, "I'll walk you," because mostly because he was speaking fluent English, like he said that like just "I'll walk you." It was a super simple sentence, but he spoke it and it didn't seem weird. And I was like, okay, he's gonna end up being like a main character or something. He's just gonna be human. He's just like a tough guy, good Samaritan. And then as soon as he got hit, I was like, oh, he's a parasite. And I still wasn't sure what was gonna happen until he specifically said, "I'm not sure you four are gonna fit in my stomach." And I was like, oh, he's not gonna be a good parasite either, which I think is totally possible. We might get that as well. But at the same time, who knows? We might not get that, because they do have to survive, and they have to survive based off of whatever species they bond to. So if it is another human, they're gonna eat other humans. That's just how it's gonna be. And they could probably eat other species as well. I know that Migi said they're essentially cannibalistic, but I don't see why they'd be limited to that, because I just don't see why. Like, I don't see why they wouldn't be able to just eat whatever, but humans would just be easy to come by, I guess. But I guess that's kind of their drive, because otherwise the dog could have totally eaten, from the last episode, that parasite dog could have easily eaten any other human. And I think they just had just a crazy fight. It was just a crazy fight scene that they put in there. But I don't know, it's kind of interesting. So, I was surprised by that opening scene, and he just swung around. And also, I didn't mention this in the last episode. There are two things I didn't mention. One I kind of forgot about until like just now, and that's the fact that these things every time make me think of Resident Evil 4 because of the Las Plagas. There's this very specific enemy where if you shoot the head off, it has the tendrils coming out. It has like one specific tendril, and it has a blade on the end, and it's like one of the crazy enemies that if it gets close enough, it'll just whip your head clean off if your health is low enough. Or I think if it just gets close enough in general, it can just whip your head off. But it looks just like that. In this, they have like several tendrils and stuff like that, so it's different. But whenever it's in tendril form with a blade at the end, I think of Resident Evil 4. Excuse me. The second thing is the music that plays during like the fight scenes is like EDM music, which really surprised me the last time. But I was kind of just going through it, and I completely forgot about the music during the end fight scene, and I paid attention to that this time as well. And I don't think it was the exact same song. It may have been the same song. I wasn't trying to keep track of which song was exactly the same, even though I just saw that for the first episode right before I watched this one. But it was like some dubstep sort of EDM music, and it was kind of funny that this music was playing in an anime in general, for one, but especially when it's this style of anime where it's like very dramatic and stuff, and then the music hits during a fight scene. It's like, oh, it's like EDM music, and it's just not something you would expect during an anime fight scene in this type of anime. So that was kind of interesting. Once again, like I mentioned before, very funny episode, lots of silly stuff. Especially the bathroom scene was without a doubt the funniest scene in this episode, and it was just hilarious. Like Migi is talking to him, was like, "Oh, I could tell you wanted to reproduce, or you wanted to mate with that female." That was funny. And then when he's peeing, it's like, "I'm gonna attempt to make your sexual organ erect," and then his hand is just moving on its own, and the guy's like right next to him, looking at him. And I love the fact that he came up to him at the end. He was like, "Hey, it's a little hard to pee when the guy next to you talking to his pecker." And it was just like, that was just the end. I was like, that's just a funny scene, and it's like, I can't believe that just happened. But it was definitely a hilarious. It was my favorite scene, favorite comedy scene at least. I don't know. I think Migi destroying the other parasite was my favorite scene, just because it was our first glimpse at Migi going like full out with like the crazy whip technique we saw from the other parasite early on in the episode, and I love that. And it was also kind of gross. She whipped the head off, and the other parasite's like, "I need my body," but when they die, they deflate, and it was really gross because the eye specifically like deflated inside the socket, so it was like in the eye socket, but it just deflated down. I was like, that was like the grossest part of the whole body deflating to me. I was like, that just, I don't know, something about the eye deflating seemed really gross to me. And then, when she pulls like the little blades out, it's just like nothing. It's like they shrivel up super fast, and it was just like, huh. It just looks kind of gross when they shrivel up, which is, I'm sure, the point with all the insanity and just crazy gore we get to see in this series. But I enjoyed the second episode. Shinichi also got to go on a date with the love interest, and I don't know if she's gonna make it through this anime. Honestly, like they have the scene when she says like, "All right, you can make up what you did to me by taking me out to get pancakes," and she asks like, "You are Shinichi, whatever his last name is," and he's like, "Yeah, of course it's me." And then they replay that at the end while they're having like a happy moment, and it's like, I don't know if that's a sign to like he's gonna be in love with her, and then he's gonna try to protect her, and I'm assuming he's gonna have to protect her at some point. The question really is whether or not he'll be able to. But from some of the clips I've seen, they'll be able to defend themselves quite well, and then who knows? Maybe at some point they will officially just bond, Shinichi and Migi. I mean, and they'll be even more powerful where Shinichi still has his mind, but Migi is able to control his entire body and transform, and they kind of have a bond where they go back and forth, and he's able to make certain movements as well. So maybe we'll get to see that happen, which I feel like it is, especially with the stuff where it seems like Shinichi's being taken over a little bit. I feel like they're gonna have that moment where either they have to bond or they just simply choose to bond. If they have to, then I think it would have to come after either Migi decides that she does actually develop feelings for Shinichi and that they actually have a sort of a familial bond, or it's not that they have to at all and it's simply by choice. Because if it's forced and Migi still doesn't give a crap, Migi will just take over, and then Shinichi would just be a natural human taken over by a parasite like all the others. So I don't think it'll go that route, which would be insane if it did, because that would just be like, holy crap, they kind of killed off the main character in a sense, because he was completely taken over mentally. So I don't think it'll be that way. It'll either be they bond, or like they choose to bond, or they have to bond, and it comes after Migi decides that she actually gives a crap, or that just won't happen in general. And I'm just speculations. That's what they're for. But I like this episode. Excited for the next one, whatever it may be, because of course Toonami, we don't get previews. But I still want to know what you guys thought about this episode. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and what do you guys think is gonna happen with like this main female villain? Because like I said, I believe that was two parasites forming together. So I'm assuming this parasite's plan is to continue to gain more parasites into this one body so that it can become stronger and stronger and live, for centuries. Even like just two together, we're already gonna live beyond 140 years, which was pretty interesting. And that parasite as well had very specific information. It knew that if they joined together, that it would live, that they would both live to 140 years old. So maybe Migi, as a small parasite, was actually a young parasite, and that's why Migi only has memories of being with Shinichi, while this other parasite actually had memories and knew, like, oh, if we bond together, and, if I chop this hand off, you can totally transplant over here, and we'll live longer and be even stronger. So there are other parasites. I'm assuming that they are actually older and they know stuff. And so when Shinichi and Migi actually encounter the next villain for episode 3, we might get even more information because it'll be another older, mature parasite. And I mentioned this in the last review, that would allow us to get information. But I thought it would simply be because certain parasites would just, figure out more about who they were. But in this case, it kind of makes it seem like they're just young parasites and then old parasites. And so some simply know about, basically their species and exactly what they are. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm very curious about this villain and what role she's going to play. Because so far they've done 2 villains and it's just like, here's an enemy this episode, here's an enemy this episode. boom, destroyed. A little bit of knowledge for the second one. I guess knowledge for both of them, really, because we learned the stuff about transforming the host body to something totally different from the very first monster. So, little bits of information from each little encounter that they've had so far, but this, if it's going to be a main villain, I feel like it's going to be multiple parasites in one. But like I said, I want to know what you guys thought about this one, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.